All right, today we're going to dive into a pretty fascinating and maybe a little controversial take on what actually drives attraction. This explainer is all about what our source material calls the unseen currencies of attraction. So let me start by asking you this. What if attraction isn't just this random magical thing? What if it follows a hidden set of rules, almost like a game that has its own secret currencies? Well, the theory we're exploring today says that's exactly what's going on. The argument is that attraction isn't just about your looks or what your hobbies are, but it's really about navigating these unseen psychological frameworks. And understanding them is key, because they could be influencing our interactions without us even knowing it. We're going to break them down into three distinct currencies: power, status, and validation. So let's jump right into the first one. First up, we've got the currency of power. Now, this framework presents a theory it calls the nuclear code phrases, which are framed as a way to, reclaim your power in a conversation. Okay, and you gotta love this analogy. The source compares just accepting a passive role in a relationship to that feeling of resigned misery you get when you're stuck at the DMV. It's a really powerful image, right? It suggests that a lot of us just passively accept social dynamics we don't have to, just because we think, well, that's just how it is. So according to this theory, how do you actually change that dynamic? Well, the core idea is all about shattering what the source calls the star of the movie narrative. This idea that deep down, we all see ourselves as the main character. The theory suggests that by calling someone ordinary or predictable, you completely disrupt their perceived social power, and that changes the whole conversational landscape. Why does that matter? The idea is that it shifts you from just being a character in their story to being a director of the whole social dynamic. It's a pretty bold claim for sure. And the practical application for this is called the agreement method, which is laid out here as a simple three-step process. So first, you get some kind of insult or a social test. Second, instead of getting defensive, you just agree with it. And third, that unexpected agreement is supposed to completely break the other person's pattern. It ends the test right then and there because, well, it didn't get the reaction it was looking for. So that was the currency of power. Now, let's move on to the second currency that this framework proposes: status. And the theory calls this one the status mirage. And this is just a brilliant way to illustrate the core concept. The source suggests that high social status works a lot like gravity. It's this invisible force that just naturally pulls things, or in this case people, towards it, completely effortlessly. The whole idea is that if you have real status, you don't need to announce it. People just feel it. And this all leads to what the source calls the perception hierarchy model. It's basically a theory that our attraction to other people is guided less by, a checklist of compatible traits and more by these really subtle, often subconscious cues of their social standing. It is all about perception. Here's a great side-by-side that really breaks it down. On one side, you've got all the things we say we want: shared interests, common values, you know the drill. But the perception hierarchy model argues that the things over on the right, those subtle cues like social confidence, not reacting to drama, and just a perceived sense of importance, are actually what's driving attraction. And this is crucial because the theory claims we often misdiagnose why we're attracted to someone. We focus on that left column when really the one on the right is secretly running the show. Okay, let's explore the third and final currency from our source material: validation. This section is called the validation market, and it proposes that the value of approval has fundamentally changed in the modern world. And here's another really striking analogy. The source compares modern-day compliments to a currency that's going through hyperinflation. And the logic is simple, right? The more of something there is, the less valuable each individual one becomes. This is all explained through something called the emotional inflation theory. The main argument here is that social media has created this endless, nonstop supply of attention and approval. Likes, comments, DMs, the whole shebang. So in this new economy, the theory suggests that traditional compliments have lost a ton of their impact, simply because they aren't scarce anymore. This slide really clarifies that shift, doesn't it? Before social media, getting a compliment was a relatively scarce thing, which made it feel high impact. But now, in a world flooded with digital validation, this framework argues it's become low impact, just another drop in an endless ocean of approval. The big implication here is that one of the main tools we used for connection might now just be received as background noise. That means we have to change how we communicate genuine interest. Okay, so this is the crucial part. We need to tie all this together. We've looked at three pretty different theories from our source about power, status, and validation. So what's the common thread here? This table just lays out the pattern brilliantly. Each theory we've talked about uses a really powerful analogy to introduce a core idea about basically subverting social expectations. We saw the DMV for power, gravity for status, and hyperinflation for validation. And each one of these theories gives you a framework for how to navigate these dynamics. The common thread running through all of them is that they revolve around one thing: managing perception. So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, the model presented in our source material reframes attraction as not just a feeling, but as a kind of social stock market. It proposes that it's a game of managing perception around these three unseen currencies: power, status, and validation.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. Is digging into these frameworks just a guide to better understanding the unspoken rules of human nature? Or is it a blueprint for social manipulation? The answer to that? Well, that's something for you to think about. That's all for this explainer. Thanks for tuning in.